Welcome to Taking It to the Streets. I'm your host, Andy Goldman from sunny St. Pete, Florida. This is the show where we take it to the streets, knowing if we don't, the streets will take it to us. Welcome to Taking It to the Streets. It's Andy Goldman. Thank you for joining us. As always, we inch step by step, minute by minute, to keep it with the Doobie Brothers theme, like Taking It to the Streets, closer to the NFL season. And we're getting there step by step. I've got a lot of reaction to the old grizzled one, Jerry Angelo, that joined us previously here on Taking It to the Streets. People were very positive, and it's interesting how young people love to hear what a truly experienced vet sounds like. That's not a dig on anybody that's out there now. That's just a fact. Jerry Angelo is as experienced. The gentleman next to me here would attest for that, no question about it. And some of the wisdom that he imparted to us on this podcast was invaluable. I own my own business. And just to hear him talk about character and hear him talk about how a roster is put together, that's invaluable no matter where you're at in life. And you don't have to play football, and you don't have to be a five-star recruit, a parade All-American. You can just be a normal business guy. You can be on the assembly line somewhere in middle America to appreciate what Jerry tried to impart. So it was very positive, and I really enjoyed doing it. And obviously I'm a lifelong Chicagoan. So, Jerry's time with Chicago was incredible. Took him to the Super Bowl. So we move on. I've always stressed to you viewers out there my intrigue with the topic of NIL. I talk about it a lot, but I'm not sure that I truly know or understand the depth of the topic, how it has changed the goalposts, how it has changed that really, really fine line between college and the NFL, and whether or not that line even exists anymore. I'm going to go and give you my take before I introduce our guests. It's a hot box topic. People have very strong opinions about it. I'm going on years now of being at a bar, being with friends, the barbecue, the family gathering. And I would put this right next to a political conversation that involves Trump and Biden. Okay. This gets that kind of juice out of people. And I'm not trying to be glib or sarcastic. It really does. I know our guest knows that. Most of the reaction is negative. Let's just cut to the chase here. It is negative. People can't get themselves to understand youngsters being paid. They understood elders, for lack of a better term, coaches, assistant coaches, ADs, moving on, sitting at a kitchen table, somewhere in Idaho, somewhere in Illinois, somewhere in Missouri. I'll take your child under my wing. He comes and plays for me. He'll be my child. I'll make sure he's in class. I'll get him that degree, all that kind of stuff. A year later, that coach moves to a different school for $5,000 more. Okay, no problem at all. I'm speaking about how the perception here. That went on for generations. And that was viewed as common conduct in the stratosphere that is college football, which I'm really kind of focusing on here, because we could go on forever if we talk about non-revenue sports and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that coach has to feed his kids. Yeah, that was the narrative. Yeah, he's a grown-up. He has to feed his kids. He has to feed his children. Of course he's going to move on to Idaho State when he was committed to you and your family and looked you guys in your eyes at your kitchen table. Yeah, hey, he's got to feed his kids. He's got to put kids through college. Now the game's changed. Okay? The players have the leverage. They don't have to wait a year anymore to come out. Okay, after they decide to move on and exercise their rights the same way that the coach did for generations. That bothers people. Don't know why. It bothers people. A lot of times a kid in today's world that was committed by a coach, I'm just going to use one locally here in Tampa, Florida, University of South Florida, the coach moved on to Auburn, Alex Golish. So Golish goes to, Auburn. He takes the quarterback with him from USF, who he groomed for the last year. Rubs people the wrong way. So I want to bring our guest in here with that entree because there's a lot to unpack there with the way it's perceived, the reality of it. I want to get this man's view on whether or not I presented it correctly. It's Eugene Lee. Eugene has got an incredible backstory of two of my favorite words in the English dictionary, and that is sports and entrepreneurship. When I was doing my homework on them, those are the two words that came to my brain when I was researching Eugene. I want to welcome you, Eugene, because this is going to be fun. And I really thank you for coming on my podcast, first and foremost. And secondly, I want to say that I give a proper entree to the issue that is NIL.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure being on here.
Did I give a proper segue as far as what NIL was and
I think you did. NIL is a very polarizing topic, as we all know. It has divided the country, kind of like the COVID vaccine. When you think back a few years, it has divided the country to a certain extent. You have the right side, you have the right, you have the left, you have the independents. Everyone has an opinion. Whether it's family members or friends, people who grew up in the old school, T formation, versus the, RPOs and the spread offenses of today. And so, it is a polarizing topic, and I can see both sides. Like anything else, I don't think, whether one side is right or the other side is right, the truth lies somewhere in between. I do think fundamentally NIL is sound in its purpose, in its meaning, which is to empower and to treat college student athletes fairly for the immense value that they bring to college programs. It was a long needed, necessary change in the element of equity and fairness, and I'm glad that it's here. As we've seen it grow and evolve over the last few years, I do think, we do need to have some guardrails in place, not only to protect the schools, but also to protect these student athletes in terms of the quality of representation, have some safeguards, some barriers to entry where we can regulate and make sure that qualified individuals are providing the proper insight, the advice, the counsel to these student athletes. And to take that one step further, I know you talked about the ability to move, player movement, to capitalize on the free market. In not every situation is it in the player's best interest to move. Obviously, that's first and foremost. And as an NIL agent, our job is to do what is best for that young man and his family, what is in his best interests. And most of the time, it's to stay at your current school. Now, if there's a head coaching change, that's a significant event, obviously, in which it would precipitate a move if it makes sense. But the way we approach it, I liken NIL and making decisions about player movement and school selection, not only going to the school or ending up at the school that's offering the most NIL compensation, but making sure that you check every box. And for a player that's looking at the primary offensive or defensive scheme that they run based on your position, looking at the position coach, looking at the historical success of the program, looking at the campus culture, looking at, upcoming recruits in the next class who have committed to attend that school, looking at the personnel fit based on the scheme that they run, taking all of these factors into account, and then looking to make sure that the NIL compensation, the NIL package is commensurate with the proposed value to the team. We want to make sure that all of the boxes are checked. And so that's how we approach it. It's with a level of meticulous care and detail, being very thorough, dotting every I, crossing every T, making sure that we are doing our absolute best to take all of our combined experience, our expertise, our experiential knowledge, and applying it to empower and to add value to these young men and their families, and most importantly, to protect them in this era of NIL. It can be the wild, wild west. Our job is to come in as the Wyatt Earp, to use that Western analogy, and to add some order and some justice and some fairness, and to take care and protect our people.
All right, so give me a backstory, if you wouldn't mind, and then the viewers, on yourself. Because, like I said, doing my research, you're an accountant slash lawyer, JD degree, both from Notre Dame, summa cum laude. Very, very impressive. You come out, you're practicing, I believe, intellectual property law at a firm in New York City. And on the side, you've got basically a fledgling sports boutique business going, I guess in the hopes that, hey, I'm going to start representing players if this thing could take off kind of thing. All of a sudden, you put together this group called ETL Associates, and ETL Associates around for 14 years. You're representing players. Obviously, the thing that you created on the side is working. You morph into MBK Sports Management. You're president there, and now we're forward on. We're at Strand Sports and Entertainment, where the NIL has erupted. So you're representing college players, I would assume, at a higher ratio than you were NFL players at the beginning. But it all makes sense because it's basically that's where we're at right now. Does that sound correct as far as the backstory?
It is. It is. I think.
What made you do the thing on the side? I mean, where was that always where your heart and mind was?
Well, it's funny. There's a saying, as a believer, there's a saying that man plans, God laughs. And my plan all along, as I went through, I had the privilege and the honor of attending the University of Notre Dame for undergraduate and law school, so 7 years straight. And my career path always in my mind was that I was going to follow the traditional path, graduate from law school, take a job with a big firm, start my way up that partnership track. And, I had that in my mind. And then, my third year of law school, I became friends with some of the guys on the football team playing pickup basketball going into my third year that off season, and became friends just playing pickup hoop. And as our friendships developed, a couple of them asked me to become certified with the NFLPA. And I had already accepted a job offer to move to New York City, begin practicing contractual intellectual property law. And my first firm was intellectual property law. My second firm was transactional contractual law. But I accepted a job offer to move to NYC. I began practicing law, and I began representing on the side a couple Notre Dame players. And every year thereafter, they would have a friend, teammate who was looking for representation. And I began to build it on the side that way. And those were long days. Those were long hours, obviously working the law firm life in New York City as an associate, as a young associate. Yeah. You're putting in the hours. But the timing was perfect for me because I was single. I didn't have a family at the time. I'd work a long day, come home, order some takeout, some delivery, and go right to work. I was doing this on the side. And over that 4-year period of time, when I was grinding, I began to realize that not only did I have an aptitude for the work, you mentioned my undergraduate degree, my training in accounting, never practiced accounting. I went straight through for law school, but some of the skill set and some of the innate traits, being able to work with numbers, having an affinity for numbers, they do translate, obviously, to negotiating contracts and negotiating money. And then combining that with my law firm experience, understanding the art of contractual language, how to mark an agreement, how to understand how small tweaks in language could make immense differences in value. Really understanding the art of contractual negotiation, contractual language, combining those two and translating that work over to what I was doing for my Notre Dame / NFL clients. I realized, a couple of years in, that this was a passion of mine. This is what was driving me. The hard part was walking away from that set salary, the stability every 2 weeks of getting a paycheck, to launch something with no ceiling, but obviously no floor as well. But prayer, divine appointments, guidance, faith, it led me to burn the ship, so to speak, to use a Cortez analogy, and take the leap of faith. And I did that in the fall of 2002 and launched ETL Associates, as you had mentioned, and grew that. And we transformed, we morphed into MBK Sports, take my initials out of the title, and really built that way, and then came full circle with Strand Sports, which I am blessed to call the masterpiece of the Lord's plan for my life and how he wants to use me, and taking all of the experience I've gained, all of the trials, the tribulations, getting kicked and punched in the stomach a few times, learning from your mistakes, and then growing, developing, becoming stronger, becoming unbreakable, like a cord of 3 strands. That's where we are today, taking those 28 years of experience, and applying it to the work we do for our clients. And in terms of NIL, if I can segue over there, how did we get into NIL? I mean, we were NFL long before NIL was even a thought in anybody's mind. We did diversify clientele from players only to executives and coaches about 5 years ago. And that was really fulfilling for me, because you were dealing with professionals in this sport that had more life experience. Most of whom had families. They had that professional maturity, obviously, from having been around. And it was just a pleasure to help work with them, to take my connections, my experience to help them build careers. And that was fulfilling. Pragmatically, from running a business, the hard part about, just having a thriving executive coaching practice alone, or with majority of your clients in that sector, is that you really don't, earn your commissions until you help place them in new roles. And so if clients are doing well and we sign them in the middle of a contract, obviously, we're going to support them. We're going to add value. But in terms of compensation, that doesn't happen if they're, in the middle of a contract and they're doing well in their current jobs, which most of them. And so in terms of cash flow and revenues, we needed some type of diversification. And again, answer to prayers, having attended the combine in 2024, right kind of at the sweet spot of NIL, when it was really transforming from brand deals only, or it had transformed from brand deals only to schools using NIL to compensate players for the value that they're bringing to their athletic teams. I sat in on a presentation at the combine where I really learned about NIL, the scope of NIL, the magnitude, but I also learned that there were lots of unqualified individuals that were in the space because it was not regulated, offering that advice to these players, and quite frankly, taking advantage of players and of parents who didn't know better. And so I saw not only an opportunity, but more importantly, I saw a need for us to come in, to make an impact, to make a difference, to lend a level of professionalism to the space that was very much needed. And so we launched our NIL division in April of 2024. Again, divine appointments. And I am very blessed and humbled to say that with our intentional approach about bringing an NFL business model to NIL, we have been able to grow this division significantly over the past 2 years. And we've made an impact in lives. And now we are helping several of our young men transition from NIL to the NFL that have that opportunity to play. And so it's been an awesome time. And I feel very, very fortunate and blessed. And it keeps you young too. Working with young men and college athletes keeps you young.
Definitely. Eugene, what's tougher, dealing with an NFL executive team on a contract or dealing with an athletic department and a university?
I would say both have their own challenges, but in this era where we don't have a union, we don't have collective bargaining, we don't have access to player contracts. It comes down to an agent having the connections, having the relationships to understand the market. Negotiating with a college team is a little bit more difficult because we don't really know unless we're out there, and which we do have, based on the breadth of our clientele across the country at major P4 programs, pretty much every Power 4 program in every position. We understand what players are being paid. But if you were coming into the space and you did not have that clientele at various schools across the country, you're shooting in the dark when it comes to negotiating and really understanding value for a player on the college side, because you don't have an NFLPA. You don't have previous contracts. You don't have all of these metrics that you can access and reference when you're negotiating a player's deal.
There's no rookie deal.
No, there is. No. And, but if you do have that clientele across the country, every position group, every college, you can really rely on that data to empower your negotiations.
Eugene, I remember 2014, I grew up going to Northwestern games with my dad. Mm-hmm. And if you remember, I'm not sure if you do, but I would bet you would, Kane Coulter, the old quarterback at Mizzou, at Northwestern at that time, tried to unionize Northwestern. And then he went out and tried to enlist Georgia and a few other schools, and everybody was behind it. And obviously it went nowhere. Are they better off unionizing? Because that would obviously create an umbrella collective bargaining agreement, I suppose, where, people realize it's a 105-man roster in college. It's not a 53-man roster like it is in the NFL. So a lot of these guys, I think of Arch Manning, I think of Sam Levitt. I know those are kind of the pinnacle. I've named two people. Most aren't being paid, correct? That are part of a 105-man roster. Let's just use, I don't know, Missouri, where I went to school. Mizzou has a 105-man team, a roster. They're going to pay Austin Simmons, the transfer from Ole Miss, $2 million. Now what? There's a salary cap, correct? $21.3 million is allotted as, this is where it gets tricky, folks. Eugene, you correct me if I'm wrong, $21.3 million is allotted as the NIL, quote, salary cap. Then players are allowed to go out and enlist other revenue sources, which would be from third-party groups. And that's how a guy like Arch Manning goes from $5.5 million to $9 million per year to play football. And the weird thing about it, I can't even believe I'm saying it, with his pedigree and his attraction to a marketing deal, I'd find it hard pressed to say he's not worth that. I mean, he really is. But I've got that. A, is he worth it? Is it as simple as if the market will pay it, he is worth it? I mean, is it really that? That's the old one? I mean, that would be the first thing I would say. And then the second thing, I went over this with Jerry Angelo, is, doesn't that diminish the rookie deal? Are we at the part where the rookie deal in the NFL is really being tested, because that was the carrot? So the carrot for a generation was you got to get through that rookie deal in order to get your second deal, which is where you really make your fortune if you survive the rookie deal. The rookie deal, you'll be paid well, but you're not going to be paid, obviously, what you'll be paid in the second deal. I feel like, Carson Beck, all these guys from college have come out that have already pocketed $20 million. I mean, they've already really kind of gotten themselves to the second deal. It really, doesn't that hurt the leverage point of the rookie deal?
I mean, the rookie deal is the rookie deal. I mean, once you're done with eligibility, if you want to play football anymore, you have to play professionally. You have to play in the NFL. Where we have seen it, based on the numbers, every year from the inception of NIL, we have seen it come into fruition with the number of underclassmen entries. You're seeing fewer and fewer underclassmen entries declare for the NFL draft. And that is a function, 100%, it's a direct function of NIL. And part of our job as an NFL/NIL agency is to educate, run analyses based on tangible feedback from NFL teams and decision makers as to where are you projected. If you are an underclassman with remaining eligibility, but you are draft eligible, you're 3 years out of high school, but you do have remaining eligibility, you're a top player, how do we compare what you are going to be paid NIL-wise based on the market, based on your current school, based on other schools that would have interest, versus what your rookie deal would involve, based on your round projection, the average signing bonus, the average guaranteed money in that round, plus your minimum base salary. And when we run the analysis, we can really identify and dictate whether it makes sense or not for a player to go. We had a young man who was an offensive lineman at a group of 6 school a couple of years ago, in the fall of 24. He had significant interest from major blue blood Power 4 programs to come in and be a plug and play left tackle for them. He had 2 more years of eligibility left after that season, 24 season, but he was draft eligible. And so getting feedback, I probably had 15 different NFL teams, friends and colleagues of mine that gave me tangible round feedback. The sweet spot for this young man was 4th round. And running the analysis from the year before with a little bit of an escalator for the rookie pool, we combined that signing bonus for a 4th round pick with the minimum base salary, which was $840,000 in 2025. And we came up with a number which is a little bit over $1.5 million as to what he could expect to make his rookie season in the NFL. Well, we had multiple schools that were interested in this young man at $1.5 million. So the final number would not have ended up at $1.5 million. It would have been over that based on the school interest. And the qualitative factor that we took into account was the fact that based on the position he played, offensive line, if you go to the NFL, let's say you're a 4th round pick or even a 5th round pick, you're going to make the 53-man roster your rookie season. You will be on the team. You'll probably dress, but will you play? Most likely not. You'll be standing on the sidelines holding your helmet. And at that position, in-game reps are paramount to development. So do you want to build a career, take out insurance policy on a career-ending injury, come back in, play your next season, increase your NIL value, be paid the same amount that you could make in the NFL on the NIL side, but grow and develop as a player, increase your draft status to where the next year when you come out, you're now a solid second-round pick. It makes sense. And that's how we operate. If I can answer the first part of your question about the revenue sharing cap, yeah, there's the $21.3 million, which is allocated. Now, what I do want to make clear is that not all of that's going to go to football. We have Title IX considerations where there must be a female sport that gets allocated. It's most likely with most schools, it's women's basketball. Some schools, maybe softball, some of the powerhouses. And then the other sport that usually gets a nice cut out of that is men's basketball. But football gets the lion's share as the major revenue producing sport at every school. We're right around probably 75 to 80, 85% of that budget is allocated to the football team. And like you said before, not all 105 guys are getting paid. You're probably seeing, your two deeps, maybe some incoming freshmen that have high value that were 4 and 5 stars. Obviously, they're going to get paid now. And maybe your specialists get a little bit as well. So maybe about 50, 55, they get paid.
This episode of Taking It to the Streets is brought to you by Wrightwood Medical, the leader in used and refurbished medical equipment. Wrightwood specializes in ultrasound equipment, but can also be your vendor of choice when sourcing lower cost alternatives for your operating room suites, scanning the entire medical spectrum. From single physician offices to larger hospitals, Wrightwood is the lower cost solution for your everyday medical equipment needs, and all of Wrightwood's equipment comes with warranty. You can reach Wrightwood directly at www.wrightwoodmedical.com. That is with a W, WRIGHTWOOD medical, or 773-848-7100. Again, 773-848-7100. If it's used medical equipment, it's Wrightwood Medical.
Eugene, I've wrestled with this for years now about whether I like it or don't like it. And here's where I've come up with it. I have an inner struggle that I have argued with friends, family for years now. I can't get past what the coaches did to create this situation. I don't know if I'm crazy. I feel like they are the bad guys in the room. That's just how I look at this. Years and years, generations of them leaving after lying to players and their families. And now the chickens come back to roost with the players being able to do it. And it seems like they despise it. And they're coming up with every single narrative of how it's borderline un-American. Really, that's the vitriol that people have about the kids having the freedom to be able to, decide their way as the coaches have. So I see it that way. Now, folks, it's not the same. Okay, like I was talking about with Jerry. It's not the same. Michigan, Ohio State is not the same. The backyard brawl is not the same. All the rivalry games, the Oregon State, the USC, UCLAs, they're not the same. So if you are over 43 years old, you know what I'm talking about. That doesn't make you an ancient, old, drinking bar, a wine cooler on a rocking chair somewhere in Ohio. Okay, you're 43 years old. You know what it was like to see a great Michigan and Ohio State game. Guys switching with relative ease, some playing for Ohio State one year and going to Michigan the other. I mean, it sucks to be one. So I get that side of it too. But I'll tell you, Eugene, I can't get past, I think it's a 1-1A. The coaches created this with their unmitigated, disastrous, moving with no regard for families and players for years and years, generations. I also have a problem with the schools, to this day, I think, not providing long-term health to the football players. How do you march off these 105 kids on each roster and not provide them long-term health? That to me are so unconscionable that in the end I root for. I think the players are in the right, and I don't know where you stand on it.
Well, obviously, having a thriving NIL practice, I mean, we're all about the players. We're all about doing what's right and doing what's equitable for the players. We do have an executive and coaching division, so we are empathetic. We do understand, are sensitive to those considerations as well. But like you said, it's all about fairness. We've had situations where we are negotiating an NIL deal for a player at a Big Ten school, and the head coach tells them, "Hey, you don't need an agent to do your deal. Just talk to me. We'll get it done. We'll get it done." And then, what we told the player to ask the coach, "Coach, do you have an agent? Do you have an agent? Did you do your own deal with the AD?" Nothing more needs to be said.
Yeah, disingenuous.
So, yeah, it's pretty astounding. And until you have that representation, that qualified representation that has your back, you really don't understand what you're missing. And to go to your point about long-term healthcare, I think it's a phenomenal concept. I think these players should, especially the ones that play and play quite a bit, they should be protected with that long-term healthcare. The issue, and it goes back to unionization, the hard part is that you would have to deem these players as employees of their institution to unionize.
But Eugene, you're a lawyer. Aren't they basically employees? When you're writing Arch Manning a check for $5 million out of an NIL pool, does that not make him an employee of the University of Texas?
He is. Every NIL agreement, as of today, every NIL agreement, it is not pay for play. It is written in the agreement. It is not pay for play. It's compensation for the players' NIL. We all know that the 100% direct correlation between a player's ability on the field and the value of his NIL, as does every college in North America. And so that's how it stands right now. I do agree that, substance over form, these players, they are generating millions of dollars in revenue for athletic programs across the country. Are they employees? An argument can be made, yes, they are. But are they student athletes? Are they receiving an education? The argument is yes. And so, it's kind of a gray area in terms of how you classify them to get to the end result. But I think we all can agree and understand that we want the best for these players. And that pertains to their physical well-being, their long-term physical well-being, their financial well-being, their professional well-being, whether it's having the opportunity to play professionally beyond the game of college football, or to have a really nice nest egg to embark on their future career with a degree in hand.
Yeah. Eugene, people come back and say, well, Jacksonville State, University of New Hampshire, South Dakota State, all these different schools that are the tiny school taking on, Missouri and Alabama in late August, early September. They've got no chance. Well, do your homework, folks. They never had a chance. Okay, they never had a chance. Okay, so it's not like we're in new territory here. Okay, there's never going to be a chance where Savannah State's not a 38-point, home underdog. We let them play at home. They're never going to get the game at home against Alabama. They have no chance. The seminal moment for the upset was in the 90s when Appalachian State beat Michigan. It's happened once. It's UFO kind of stuff, folks. So there's nothing to get weird about when you talk about these smaller schools. I mean, they were up against it from the beginning, correct, Eugene? I mean, they're not going to win. They're there to get a paycheck from whoever the large school is, the SEC or the Big Ten school, so that they can continue operations as a football team. It's some way it provides a value add to their student body and their traditions, and that's what it is. I'm sorry, if you go to Savannah State, am I correct? That's what you get out of it. You get a paycheck. If you want to play Missouri.
Yeah, you get paid by the program. I think you just touched on a pretty good, on a unique point of view that I'd like to mention. How do you compete? If you are a top player at a group of 6 school and you are a top player, how do you retain that player in this era of NIL? It is very, very rare, virtually impossible. If you're a group of 6 school, to keep your stud, the guy who's going to play eventually on Sundays, to going to a major Power 4 program. However, in recruiting players as a head coach at a group of 6 program, changing your mindset, I think, to target those borderline Power 4 players that, could probably get a Power 4 offer or matriculate at a Power 4 school, but would sit the bench, for the first couple of seasons with no guarantee that they'd ever see the playing field until they get, show what they can do. Target those players. promise them immediate playing time at your group of 6 school, get them on the field, and just to be upfront with them, be transparent and said, hey, our goal is not to keep you here for all 4 years. Our goal is to have you come in immediately, show what you can do on the field, increase your NIL value. And then if you're at the point of your career after the season, or maybe it's 2 seasons where we do our due diligence, we go out there and we for you on your behalf, and we say, hey, there's legitimate Power 4 interest, we'll be the first ones to help you, to take the next step because you have added value to the program. You've helped us win. And if you approach it that way, very pragmatically, I think you would do very well in recruiting at the group of 6 level. You wouldn't try to keep fighting an uphill battle, a fight you can't win, but you would kind of, join forces, and kind of win at your level, compete at your level, recruit very highly at your level. And then, that's just how I would approach it, because I've had other people ask me, how do you compete? You don't compete against a Power 4, but what you do is you use the dynamic that we have nowadays to your benefit as a program to help you win games at your level of competition.
Isn't that what the Tampa Bay Rays do year in and year out? They know on that $100 million pittance of a payroll that they're going to get cherry picked. They're going to lose Glass now. They're going to lose Snell. They're going to lose Longoria in the 2000s. They're going to lose all these great studs that Tampa Bay seemingly has to be a 95-win team year in and year out, playing an AL East schedule, playing their home games in St. Pete, Florida, which would be a small minor league city if it was in the minor leagues. Now, so that's why, folks, it's not weird. Don't act weird about Texas poaching on a kid that's playing at Idaho State, who happened to develop as a late sophomore instead of as a high school junior. Don't act weird about it, because right now that's the same deal that exists in Major League Baseball. I mean, there's no salary cap. Guy's doing his thing for the Tampa Bay Rays. Boom. He's gone to the LA Dodgers, the New York Yankees, so quick your head would spin. Doesn't mean, to Eugene's point, that Tampa is doomed for failure. That Tampa, because they've refuted that. They've been able to win in the 90s for a ridiculous period of time, like over 20 years kind of thing, playing in St. Pete, Florida. Correct, Eugene? You can be both. Northwestern can beat Notre Dame. Okay, they can do that. They have.
I don't know about that, but
they did. They did. They beat him with Gary Barnett.
You're right. I remember that in '94, right?
Yeah. But I mean, again, we're just talking about.
Yeah.
People act weird. Now, Eugene, I want to close this with some candor.
Yeah.
Do you like the NIL rule? I know you that's your butters your bread. I don't want. Of course, you're going to say yes. But what I'm saying is, does it affect you? The watering down of the Ohio State Michigan game, the watering down of USC UCLA. Are you old enough where that kind of that memorabilia that connected generations for years and years?
Yeah.
Okay, so you get where I'm going. And does that bother you?
No, because I'm old enough to know, and I always say I'm older than I look. I'm 53 years old.
Oh wow.
So I'm old enough to remember, like, the NFL back in the late 70s, early 80s. There was no free agency. You got drafted by an NFL team. You have you're stuck. And are you going to get your fair market value? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Walter Payton is going to be a Chicago Bear, period.
Correct.
He's a good example. There's no Walter Payton today would have been, a very high paid free agent.
I mean, you look at the
Steelers. He was relegated to playing with a very bad Chicago Bears team.
I grew up a Steelers fan, being from Canton, Ohio, in the late 70s, kind of the end of their dynasty. Can you imagine how that defense would they have kept that entire defense intact?
Never.
No. So
never.
Being a fan is one thing, but having really understood and, from the NFL ranks now to NIL about, yes, from a purist perspective, enjoying the grandeur and the allure of those rivalry games. It's awesome. It has this romantic appeal to it. But at the end of the day, the pragmatic, it goes back to the saying, like, before you can judge, walk a mile in another man's shoes. Before you sit back and you yearn and you pine for those days where it was just the roster, there's no player movement. You can't bring in Caleb Downs from Alabama to come start for you at Ohio State. Before you make those judgments, understand, from a player's perspective of what they're going through, about not really, most of these young men, they don't come from privileged backgrounds. Where it was 20 years ago, and that was the intent of NIL, where you go to a bookstore, campus bookstore, and you have jerseys, you have calendars and posters being sold with photos of these players, and they're not getting 1 cent. And many of them couldn't take their girlfriend out for a movie or dinner on Saturday night.
Right.
And so before I can judge another person, I want to walk a mile in their shoes. And so going back to your question, rivalries are rivalries. Yes, there was a level of purism when the roster was set and the roster was the roster. But as we've evolved as a country, as we've evolved in this industry, there's a saying, the toothpaste is out of the tube. It's not going back in. The NIL is here to stay. Now, will it get modified? Will it get adjusted? Will we have guardrails put up? Most likely, yes, absolutely. But I think in its purest form, the intent is good. Doing what's right and equitable by these players is good. And I think that, and I believe that when you take that mindset and you can take it and you look and you introspect, each person, each young man on that team, and why, let's say he transferred in, why he made the decision. Maybe it's to help a sick relative. Maybe it's, to put his family in a better position. Maybe it was a dream of his. He never had the opportunity coming out of high school because he wasn't that 5-star recruit.
Yeah.
Who am I to say, or who are you or anybody to say, you have to stay put. You can't pursue that dream. Because if we had that opportunity, it's always easy to make that judgment, that decision, until you have that same opportunity presented in front of you. Then it's a different ballgame.
I find it strange, and I do point my finger a little bit at the older generation, the people that are older than us. They really have a problem, it seems to me, on the student athlete. The degree isn't worth what it was 40 years ago. Okay. A college degree simply is not worth what it was 40 years ago. That's the first thing. The second thing is they're really drunk on this narrative that the coach has to feed his family, not the player has to feed his family. They're very weird. I've noticed that. They can't cross that bridge that the coach has a family to feed, not the player. So I find that weird.
Yeah, there's always been that level of unfairness between. You can even look in the college ranks. I won't name names, but there were some certain high-profile coaches at the college football level, very high profile, that were hit for recruiting violations, sanctioned NCAA, and that left for the NFL. Yeah. And so,
interesting.
Could you do that as a player? No.
All right, a couple of questions before I let you go. How's Notre Dame going to be? I actually golfed with some ND grads maybe about a week ago down here in Tampa. They gave the guarded touchdown Jesus answer that I grew up with in Chicago, which is, we're going to be a top 3 team. They weren't willing to take ownership for a number 1 chest beat kind of situation. Second question, which game scares you? To a man, it was Miami. So that's where my golf buddies from Notre Dame fell. Where do you fall on the Irish this year? And they beat Miami.
I'm usually in that same boat where I'm more guarded in my answers, but having several players that we work with on the team, having and representing, in my opinion, the best defensive line coach in the country, and Charlie Partridge, Notre Dame's defensive line coach, and the masterful job he and the rest of the staff has done in recruiting talent on the defensive line, they're stacked. Like, they are stacked top to bottom, and beyond the talent on that team, it's the mindset, it's the culture, it's that choose hard mentality that Marcus Freeman has instilled in everybody. And I'm proud. I'm proud to be an alum. I'm proud to be part of the University of Notre Dame. And I think, I'll just put it this way, we can compete with anybody for that natty this year. Things have to go right. Obviously, it's a long season. Injuries are part of the game. You have your freak occurrences here and there, but top to bottom, we are as good as any team in the country. And I think that could we see ourselves hoisting that natty trophy? Yes, absolutely. Will it turn out that way? Only God knows. But I do believe that, knowing the program, knowing the players, knowing the coaches and the staff and the personnel department, Mike Martin, the GM, good friend of mine. We're going to be up there with anybody. We'll be able to compete with anybody. And do we beat Miami November 7th? Absolutely.
Love it.
Little payback.
Finally, a Notre Dame guy that had this to come
I'll put it out there.
and put the flag in the middle of midfield. That's a little
100%.
I love it. I love it. Which teams? Give me the teams from your perspective. The top three that we're talking about that are going to be there in the end.
Oh gosh, I think you have to go Notre Dame. Obviously.
Do you trust Texas? Do you trust Texas at all?
Texas.
Would you trust A&M more?
I know A&M. We work with a top executive in that program. I don't
know why I trust A&M more.
Yeah,
where they're headed.
I'll tell you what. I could see A&M, Texas A&M, and Ohio State.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Yeah, Eugene, you're the best. I so appreciate this time we got to share, and you really enlightened all of us.
Hey, it's been my pleasure, Andy. I've enjoyed this time immensely, and thank you for having me on.
Folks, the next time you see me, I'm going to have on a guy that Eugene would have absolutely have represented. I'm surprised I didn't get your take on him, Eugene, because I actually didn't think you were old enough. You will definitely know my next guest from my roots at University of Missouri, Kareem Rush, who was the great, great guard that played for the Tigers. He was on that Final Eight team. The older brother, Jerron, if you remember Eugene, went to UCLA. His little brother was a superstar at Kansas, Brandon. But Kareem played for the Lakers, drafted 20th overall by Toronto. Thankfully was traded to the Lakers, where he got to play with Shaq and Kobe. He will join us, talk about those glory days at Mizzou. And then the NFL season is around the corner. We thank Eugene Lee. Thank you for watching here on Taking It to the Streets.
Goodbye from St. Pete. And remember, folks, you're only as good as your last trade, so never too high, never too low, till we meet again.